routine changes. In a space too far from anything to be nothing, a blue light shines into the void. Through the shadows, shapes appear. People, stories, wonders, and mysteries. Live from Elgin, Illinois at the Blue Box Cafe, it's Tales by the Blue Light. With me, your host, James Wilder. This month, like every month, we're going to be calling in stories through this blue light. Just imagine we have the blue light up here today. There's usually light. These stories come in all forms of wonders, science fiction tales, fantasy adventures, and horrors to make you shudder. So join us as we discover new places, new people, and take new journeys together by listening by this blue light like you might by the fireside. All the stories you'll be hearing today are brand new, and they were written by yours truly. So if you don't like what you're hearing, put something in the chip jar or go find me on Patreon. So, before we get started, as usual, I have been practicing a trick to perform here. I just need to get everything in order. Do we have the 7 dancing dogs ready? No dancing dogs. Okay, crap. Okay, I can work without them. But the motorcycle, the wheel fire. No. Okay, what do you mean that won't work on... Okay, fine. I'm sorry, everyone. No trick this month. But, wait, what's this? Looks like we have a guest coming through the blue light. Hello! Who is it? It looks like it's some sort of 1920s gangster. Hey, where we at, pal? Hi, we're in the Blue Box Cafe in Elgin, Illinois. A little noisy, huh? There's a lot of stuff that gets moved around this day. Hey, maybe you can help me out. Maybe? How can I help you? I got some stuff the feds don't want to see, something illegal. I'm afraid I can't help you there. We don't deal in illegal stuff. I can fake good. It's 2 cases of Budweiser. Budweiser? Yeah, real illegal stuff. Oh, right, because, you're from the Prohibition era, of course, yeah. Yeah, well, you dressed really funny, pal. That's because, and this might be hard for you to believe, but that blue light here plucked you out of time and pushed you here to the year 2018. 2018? Past the millennium? So what? You got flying cars? No. You got the cure for cancer? No. You got robots doing the work for you? Sort of. And what's good for the future? Well, they did repeal prohibition, so you can get liquor nearly anywhere. Oh my God, that's better than a flying car. It's a miracle, utopia. Here, share a beer with me. Yeah, sorry, I don't drink, man. Well, fun. I'm gonna go find a shop and get some. I got a whole $1. That'll give me tons of beer. Good luck with that. Goodbye, blue light. See you later. All right, well, he's in for a rude lesson about inflation. Anyways, I might as well get you guys started on the first story we have for you tonight. This has been the final part of our serial sci-fi adventure that you've been following this year, the Dusk Cycle. Of course, however, a lot of you guys are probably hearing this for the first time. So, previously on 10,000 Daughters, Graylin and Archimedes, or time travelers, have been fighting a fight across history against their alternate reality selves, named Blanche Condon and Apollo. Together, they've managed to capture them over the course of their adventures and taken them to confront the leader of the group they work for who meddles through history, causing havoc in time, named Dusk. And now, they're facing down that mysterious leader. You've heard stories about Dusk and Dawn. Stories about universes rising and falling. Stories about Graylin and her struggles against herself. Stories about Blanche Combine and her dark choices. And now, we find ourselves in a ruined city facing a mysterious man in a cloak. But I ask you, what about Arch? Yes, Archimedes von Honore, the cyborg friend we've all wanted. He seems like a decent chap, doesn't he? Or they sometimes. Content to be along for the ride, never afraid to challenge Graylin when she starts acting in an unacceptable way, but always willing to let her take the lead. He's the kind of guy who stares up at the stars at night, but doesn't judge you if you think that's boring. And he's here too. Sometimes it's easy to overlook him. He's always there, always helping, but he's not always yelling the loudest, though he can. You've heard a lot of stories about a lot of people, but this is a story about Arch. Arch, as you know, was standing in front of the leader of Dusk along with Graylin and their alternate universe counterparts, Blanche Combine and Apollo von Honore. It was a big showdown. The leader of Dusk was pulling down their hood, and this was naturally a big tease, because as they pulled down their hood, The pre-planned bombs went off. They didn't seem to go off quite as intended because, hey, no one died. But when the explosions had finished and the dust was settling, the leader of Dusk was gone and Graylin was on the ground, debris on her legs. Blanche scrambled up and looked down at her doppelganger. She wasn't moving. Arch ran over to her and checked the vitals. "She's alive," he said and touched her face. "Apollo, do you know medicine?" I downloaded the files about it," he replied. Arch nodded. "Good enough. I need to stay here and take care of her while Blanche and I find that leader of Dusk." "What?" Blanche said. "I can't, and you don't want me along with you." Arch didn't look at her as he replied. He simply attended to Graylin. "You can, and you're going to, because we need to stop the leader of Dusk before anyone else gets hurt." She watched as the two of them pulled away the rubble and began to care for Graylin. When she was stable, Arch rose and walked toward her, then past her, grabbing her by the elbow as she went. "Come on. I don't know about you, but I could use some ice cream." She looked back at Graylin as they walked. I thought we had to hurry, isn't she? She's my best friend. I'm more worried about her right now than I ever want to be again. The best thing I can do for her is to solve the problem at hand. Well, that's what she would do, at least. "So what, you just gotta leave her?" "I literally left myself with her. That's kind of how this works. I think my own hands are pretty capable." Arch led her out of sight, and then reached into a bag and pulled out a handful of crystal dust. He threw it in the air in a carefully orchestrated motion, and a glowing white portal formed in front of them. Arch gestured for her to enter, and Blanche obliged. She stepped through the portal onto a street, in which she guessed was Toronto? "What are we doing here?" she asked. "Like I said, we're getting ice cream. Come on, keep up." She scampered after him down the pavement, and they entered into an ice cream shop. Arch walked up to the counter. I usually get pistachio, but I think I will try the lemon pie flavor today. What about you?" Blanche didn't understand why they were going to eat ice cream at her time right now, but she ordered the turtle sundae. They sat down at a table and ate their ice cream. It was better than it had any right to be. "Good, right?" Arch asked. She tried not to smile. "I suppose so. Did you ever stop to think about the fact that this ice cream shop exists? I mean, someday maybe it won't, but right now it does. And you and I are sitting here eating ice cream. It's wonderful, isn't it? It just is." "I suppose. But it feels so pointless. We need to be chasing the leader of Dusk, right? So, they don't get away." Arch flashed up a calm-looking waterfall onto his television like carapace. "It's all okay. I know what I'm doing. What if I told you that we were on their trail right now?" Blanche's hair stood up on the back of her neck. "You mean they're in this shop?" Arch laughed. "You're the one saying it. Look, I know what I'm doing, and you need to enjoy some ice cream." She nodded and ate another spoonful. It was delectable. "What do you want to do, Blanche? I mean, what would you do if you had whirled enough in time? No threat, no worry." "Travel," she said so quickly, she felt a bit surprised by the answer. Arch nodded. "You've seen some amazing places already, but, on missions. I just want to go places, see them, but, I can't really." "You found that you could just eat ice cream." She shook her head. "That's different. You say so. And anyways, you all done?" She nodded. "Then let's do what you said. Let's travel." He reached into his pocket and pulled out another handful of the crystal dust and threw it in the air. It spiraled and solidified into a white portal. "Come on then, let's get going." He got up and hopped through. Blanche hesitantly stood up and followed. She stepped from the bright ice cream store into a dark maze of a corridor. It looked like there was water outside the thick glass. "Where are we?" Blanche asked. "Where I met you, or, somewhere like it. It's an underwater facility called Project Atlantis." Blanche looked around the corridor of silver, metal, and glass. The architecture was more brutalist where I came from. Arch rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I tried not to be judgmental, but that's pretty gross. Brutalist architecture, no." She grew angry for a moment. "How dare you say that about our own universe?" But, she kind of started laughing, and so did he. Over here's a statue of Artemis that Graylin showed me. It's nice, isn't it? Goddess of the hunt, separated from the other gods. Probably better for it. "Why am I here now?" Blanche replied. Arch looked at her. She tried to return the look. "You know who the leader of Dusk is deep down, Blanche, don't you?" Arch asked, holding an unwavering gaze on her. She nodded with a slight movement that was less far than her pupil shifting away from Arch. And you know that I know, so just say it. It's me, Blanche whispered. It's me, and it's always been me. Of course it has, Arch said. And I knew it before you ever accepted it. But the leader of Dusk recruited me. Yeah, time's a funny thing. It's like drawing a picture, a single stroke, and it's a different work. But if you start from the same place, a talented artist can get to a similar end through different means. And you ever wonder why we never heard of Dusk before we met you? Blanche frowned, because we waited until the right time to finally make a move ourselves, and Arch was shaking his head. No, Blanche, it's because every other mission Dusk had went on was a disaster. 1036. 2 agents of Dusk tried to stop the Norman invasion of England. They bungled it and were stopped by the firm enemy. During the building of an amusement park in Japan, an agent of Dusk tried to sabotage it and fell off. A different agent of Dusk tried to stop Shaka Zulu by giving a neighboring tribe laser guns. Unfortunately, they all got drunk before the battle, and the Zulu slaughtered them anyways, and so on and so forth, until you, no agent of Dusk, even survived the mission. Do you know why that is, Blanche? I'm that good. No, Blanche, it's because your future self realized that you couldn't do what you wanted. You came up with this crazy ideology and no one was receptive to it anywhere you went. Well, nearly no one. You found some recruits, but none of them were trained. You couldn't train them. You showed up to their doorstep, your big black cloak rapping on the door and preaching nothing at the end of all things, but you weren't anyone. You just had a dream, so you decided you'd recruit yourself. You showed up, made your own pitch, and changed your own history in the hopes that you'd learn more when you were younger and be stronger when you were older. And you know what? It sort of worked. At least it worked for a time, and that's the problem we have now. Blanche looked at him. What do you mean the problem I have now? Because she is changing right now just as you are. She's you, the same you. But now she knows things she and you never did before. And she's not the same person who tried to recruit you. Arch squatted down to her level and put a hand on her shoulder. Graylin likes big moves, big showdowns. She's a big dramatic person. And I'm sure you too. And we can have that. We can face off with you and have a big fight and, I don't know, you can make some big last stand and die, or you can just make a choice, and I can't make that choice for you. Blanche pulled away from him. So what, those are the options you leave me at, torn away from that future or off myself? Arch rubbed his forehead, which squeaked as he did so. No, Blanche, you need to accept that those are the choices you've left yourself, because if I know you at all, you don't want that future, do you? She pressed a hand to the glass and looked out at the fishes. No, you're right, I don't want it. I've never wanted it. I just thought that by the nature of your birth, to be pain was inevitable. A large thing, its scales black, its teeth going over its lips, and an overbite swam in front of the glass. I suppose it did. Then choose something else, Arch said. She pressed her face against the glass. Where could I go? Arch gestured wildly. I'm a time traveler. I've met a lot of people. I can, give you a fresh start. And when you get a fresh start, I'll never hurt anybody anymore, she finished. I actually don't know why you're being kind to me. I really don't deserve that. He shrugged. Why not? She chuckled. Why not? Well, her face fell into a black stare. Why not indeed? Yeah, she said. Okay, let's do this. They arrived back in the rubble where Graylin was sitting up and drinking some water slowly. Arch, you're back, she stated. I got rid of the leader of Dusk, Arch replied plainly. Graylin gave a weak thumbs up. Proud of you. Nice solo work. Thanks! His face lit up in dozens of pleased emojis. But it does mean we need to find a new place for Blanche here. And Blanche said, I need to break off from you, Apollo, pal. Apollo, who was sitting, still tending to Graylin, looked up in shock. No, come on. We're partners. We've been partners. I'm bad for you. I'm the one who got you into this awful mess, and I had to fix myself before I mess up your life even more than I already have. And I used you, and I'm sorry, and I know that, and I know I can't change overnight. And Apollo nodded. Then where are you going to go? Where am I going to go? I called a friend to pick her up. As for you, we can take you anywhere you want, Arch replied. I want to go somewhere I can help, he said. We can make that happen. And they did. Epilogue 1, Apollo. The city had been destroyed, but the children had found the metal man, and he kept them safe. He appeared in a flash of white light with bags of food and tools. He cared for them in the wastes and told them he was waiting for his friend. Every so often, two strangers would show up and ask if he'd like to go somewhere else. He said no and was happy there. He rebuilt homes. He learned to farm, and soon he made other friends, and less soon, as the weeks turned to months, he heard himself calling this strange place home in these survivors' family. He missed his friends sometimes, but he wondered why he had thought so strongly he couldn't survive without her. Then one day, he didn't wonder at all. Epilogue 2, Blanche. The machine was made of crystal. She knew it was called a factory of crystal, a huge flying device that could slip between realities and hop between times, but why she was on it was another question. Hello there, you must be Blanche. I'll ignore that. I think I forgot to put the Django away before I started piloting the ship. A tower of wooden blocks tumbled over on a nearby table. Rats. Well, I guess I'll have to start over. Blanche looked around the room. Am I your prisoner here, she asked. The woman frowned. Of course not. I mean, I was told you were a murderer, but that's okay. I meant worse. I was told you wouldn't be good, and you're sure in luck because I'm absolutely great, so it wouldn't be hard for a little of that to rub off on you. The strange brown-skinned woman was wearing a blue frock coat and a gray infinity scarf with a slouch cap over her frizzy black hair. What's your name, then? She grinned black. Lady Asclepius. Yes, I know, it's a bit short and simple, but I'm thinking of adding some silent letters to it just to liven things up, so where to first? Ancient Rome in 2003 AD? That's ancient, Blanche queried. They shrugged. Why not? Now, come on. Self-discovery can only happen if we actually do some discovering, so let's start flying. Epilogue final. Arch. Arch knocked on the door of Grayland's hospital room. She waved as he entered in. Did you make me dinosaur-shaped cookies? She said, looking at the plastic box he held. They're not all shaped like dinosaurs, he countered. Some are shaped like dogs. He sat down and she opened the box and bit into a brontosaurus. This whole Dusk business, Yowza, I'm glad it's over. I mean, how'd you get rid of the leader of Dusk anyway? Ice cream, Arch replied. Grayland waited for the gag, but there was none. I hope you made it dinosaur-shaped. Arch nodded. Next time, he said seriously. There's always room for improvement after all. Thank you. All right, and that concludes our 4-month-long sci-fi serial story. Next month, we'll have something brand new and different in that slot. But till then, we have our first advertisement of the show. This episode of Tales by the Blue Light has been brought to you by filing your taxes at the last minute. Do you like putting things off? If you didn't already this year, try doing your taxes at the last minute for hours of hair-pulling entertainment. Call your former employer for a form you didn't know you needed and pray they pick up. Scramble under the seats of your car from receipts from that work trip and get your family in on the fun as all of you try to clean up the coffee you spilled on your W-2. Why do things now you could do later? Doing your taxes at the latest minute. As we always say, all right. And now for this month's fantasy tale, coming in from our blue light. We're going to return to the adventures of our friend Miss in our third outing, Ms. 3, A Miss to the Cold. It was winter in the graveyard. Ms. supposed that it was probably winter in many places, but it was winter here now, and that was a surprise for her. She'd fallen asleep next to a headstone on a spring evening, the sunset glowing orange across the horizon. Now, she was covered in snow, her body shivering itself awake. She tried to move her hands, and they didn't at first, but slowly she pushed motion into them, and they creaked away like a wooden box that hadn't been opened in decades. She pushed herself up against the tombstone and tried to take a few steps. She fell, of course, face first into the snow. With heaving breaths, she tried to work up the strength to rise again, but it eluded her, so she crawled. Her forehead pushed against the snow before any other part of her body, and her brain felt woozy as she shoved one elbow in front of the other, using her full forearm to push her forwards towards the nearby town. The world got hazy when she was just telling herself to go forwards, but her limbs weren't moving anymore. Oh well. The ground was feeling more comfortable than she would have anticipated. Maybe she'd just take a nap right here, just a short one. The world faded into black, and through the shadows she heard a voice. "It's a girl! Quickly, get her inside! There's no time to waste!" Ms. awoke again, but this time the first thing she saw wasn't snow-covered headstones, but a roaring fireplace. Her feet were propped up on the stool in front of it, and she was covered in a warm blanket. Pulling her feet down, she stretched her limbs, and checked she had all her digits. She was in a nice, plaid armchair in a wood-walled room. "I think she's awake," a voice called, and Ms. leaned around the high chair back to see a woman with a big tea tray of goodies push the door open. "Hello there, dearie, I see you're awake. Now, why don't you get something warm inside you?" Ms. went to speak, but found her throat couldn't manage it yet, so she just nodded. The woman pulled up a small table, set the tray on it, and Ms. guzzled down some of the scalding hot tea before reaching for the bread and cheese. She felt her strength coming back to her and finally managed to get out a question in between bites. "Where's my sword?" The woman blushed. Yes, damn it! Would you grab our guest's sword?" The little boy came running in, holding Mrs. Sword in his arms, the leather strap on the scabbard bouncing against his knees. She grabbed it from him and tucked it across her chest as she kept eating like it was a teddy bear. It's winter here. So what happened? Did I fall asleep for 200 years or something? Because I heard about a guy who did that, and she whistled and popped her eyebrows up. "Look, all I'm saying is I wouldn't want to be that guy." She shook her head. I'm afraid not. It's the factory." Ms. squinted. "Factory?" No, factory. It's a place where things are created. Ms. nodded. "Oh, you mean like a workshop?" "No, not quite. It's much larger. Imagine many workshops, all linked together. Since it opened up, the seasons have gotten confused, but I suppose that's the price for industry." Ms. took a bite out of an apple and cocked her head to the side. "People build a lot of stuff in the workshop, so you have winter in spring?" I'm not really following. The woman scratched her head. Look, it's complicated. I'm sure that the owner would love to give you a tour after you have a rest. It's the pride of the community." "All right, I suppose so. I'm supposed to be out and about slaying a dragon I heard about, but I haven't seen heads or tails of it. I don't even know how many heads it has." "What's this guy's name anyway? The many workshop owner?" "His name is..." The woman became suddenly serious. "You're not a foreigner, are you? We're supposed to cast out foreigners." Ms. stopped mid-bite and answered with a mouthful. "What? A foreigner? Never heard of her." "Okay, that's good then. Our great benefactor is none other than Demi-Drachma, Lord of all darkness and annihilator of good." Ms. gestured with her apple. "All right. I think maybe I should take that tour." Ms. put on her leather armor and the tunic she wore over it, then slung her sword crossways over one shoulder and her shield over the other, and looked at herself in the large mirror that her house had. She'd grown since she started her journey months ago. She'd just been a child then. Too much time had passed, but the journey had hardened her features. She wondered what her mother would think when she saw her again, or the village elder. From her adventuring, their village had prospered again. She'd sent money back whenever she could, and the elder had sent back letters, which she got read to her whenever she could. She was still trying to learn how to read, picking it up slowly. She was getting more familiar with runes and incantations than letters and poems, and in a way that troubled her. She lived a life outside of these people in their wooden house, a life of danger and adventure, but there was something to be said for a warm fire and plentiful food, instead of a cold ground and trail rations. She flicked herself in the face with her leather gauntlet and pushed those thoughts out of her head. She was going to meet a man named Demi-Drachma, Lord of all darkness and annihilator of good. She had to be on her toes. The woman and her son went with her to the factory. The snow had given way to a blazing sun, and her leather armor and clothes were beginning to make her sweat like the icicles dripping away around her. The factory was a huge stone structure, boxy and inelegant, though certainly efficient. On its roof sat a great golden dish that Ms. was sure served some purpose, but she couldn't take a guess what. Inside the factory, hundreds of people worked, pumping at strange devices that seemed to be routed into the dish on the roof through hoses in the ceiling. In the midst of all of it was a man in fine wizard robes, looking at clipboards and ordering people around. The mother coughed, and the wizard looked over. Demi-drachma, Lord of all darkness and annihilator, good meet Miz, a traveler we found in the snow last night. He smiled and held out a hand. Please, Demi-drachma, Lord of all darkness and annihilator of good was my father. Call me Drachma. Miz shook his hand. So what exactly do you do here, Drachma? He held his hands out. This magnificent factory, the third of its kind anywhere in the world, bottles heat. Miz scrunched up her brow. What do you mean it bottles heat? I mean, he said, this is a techno-magical marvel. Within it contains the means to harness the complete heat of an area. That is, not just what you might think of directly as heat, but the possibility of creating heat. We can take that and use these machines, bottle the heat, and sell it to customers looking for portable warmth. It's an amazing, versatile market. I mean, you were stuck out in the cold last night, were you? Was that pleasant? I almost died, Ms. mused. Of course you did. Of course you did. But if you'd had some of our bottled heat, you could have just poured some out, and you would have had a patch of warm weather to exist in. Maybe only a few feet, depending on how much heat you use. But enough. It's a miracle product. He gestured for someone to bring over a bottle of it and handed it to Ms. A free sample. He winked, and she could practically hear the ding as he did so. She carefully opened up the lid and looked inside. There was something in there, something like air and something like fluid, glowing and swirling. It was hard to pin down exactly what it looked like. Unique, isn't it? It's like nothing else, because it's the first of its kind. I thought you said there were 2 other factories that made this. Oh, there were, he said, but, they went out of business. Ours is the only one anywhere anymore. Do you want to see how it's collected? Ms. nodded. Come up to the dish. I'll show you. They followed and ascended a staircase that led up into the dish on the roof. Being inside it was like standing in a giant soup bowl. She wondered what they did when it rained and asked as much. Oh, we have a big tarp to put over it. She kind of hoped for a more interesting answer. So we're about to do the daily ritual, so you can stay here and watch. Drachma got to the center of the bowl and began to make arcane gestures and speak secret words. This went on for a time, and Ms. yawned and considered pulling out her scroll with the words and the pictures of what they meant that she was learning from. Then it began. The air seemed to become misaligned, like when your eyes lose focus and you see double. The whole world was like that. Heat came from the bowels of every tree and rock and animal and began to fly into the bowl. They cooled in a way, and Ms. backed up, climbing up the walls of the bowl so that she wasn't touching the heat. And then it began to sink. It drained down into holes that presumably led into the tubes below. The wizard wiped his brow. See? Easy peasy. Ms. felt colder. The world felt colder. Water began to freeze. Snow began to fall. You did this? She said. You're stealing all the heat in the town and bottling it. But it doesn't just come from nowhere. He laughed. Ridiculous. If you keep sucking the heat up before it can replenish, won't the people here die and freeze to death? He scoffed again. I find that unlikely. She unsheathed her sword. You need to stop now, before I have to stop you. He grew serious. I'd like to see you try, little girl. She pulled her shield out and threw it down, jumping on it so she slid down the bowl towards Drachma, who began forming a ball of pure cold between his palms, and threw it at Ms. The blast hit her in the shoulder, and she tore off brittle, breaking leather as she leapt off her shield and swung at him. He dodged the blow, but she punched him in the face with her other fist as he dodged out of one blow into another. She brought the sword around again, but he ducked and went for her legs, grabbing hold and trying to freeze her knees off. She'd kneed him in the face, and he fell to the ground. Ms. stepped over him and raised her sword up. Above them, the townsfolk, hearing the commotion, had ran up and gathered on the brim of the golden bowl. She wished they didn't have to see this, but this had to stop. Ms. swung her sword down at Demi-drachma, crying out, giving the blow all she could. But then the mother, who pulled her out of the snow, leapt on top of Demi-drachma. Ms. tried to get out of making the blow, and in shifting her weight, tumbled off to the side and then down into the very base of the golden dish, her sword following her. You can't take him from us. He's bringing us prosperity we've never had before, the mother yelled. Ms. wiped away some of the blood from her mouth and looked up. The town was looking down at her from the rim of the bowl. She scampered up, waving her hands wildly as she spoke. You can't let him use you like this. He's going to kill all of you. Your town will be nothing more than a forgotten wasteland of frost. Don't you see how things have changed here? Drachma laughed, coughing up some blood in the process, and then tried to compose himself as well as he could for the crowd. I've given you homes, money. Do you really think I'm using you? I'm your benefactor. A burly man raised his voice. Drachma's done nothing but give to us. Will we really give him up to this outsider? A chorus of no's followed. Drachma raised a fist. And do you really believe her wild claims that I'm causing these weather shifts anyway? Ridiculous. He grinned at Miz through his bloody teeth. Go on then. Run along now. If you try to come back here, anyone in this town will they'll kill you on sight. Goodbye, Miz. I'm glad we could cast out a villain from our midst. Miz let out a breath and then pursed her lips and nodded sullenly. Gathering her belongings that had come loose in the fall, she descended from the bowl, out of the factory and out of the town. Jeers followed her. Rocks and vegetables were hurled at her, but she just kept walking until she was out of sight and the town cheered. A great festival was held that night at the vanquishing of the villain. But that was not the end of the story. 1 month later, a single figure walked out of the factory, feet skittering on the ice. Drachma cursed when he saw his cart laden with gold, for the horse was frozen dead on the ground. He walked through the icy town, past the houses filled with frozen, huddled corpses, and tried to find another horse, but all the livestock in the town had frozen to death. He knew he couldn't move the car by himself, so he'd have to cut and run until he could come back and hope no one took his stuff. Shoveling a frozen guard out of the way, he took a hand cart and took it over to his horse cart, unloading as much gold as he could reasonably push onto it and setting on his way. It was to his surprise that a single person blocked the road from the village. Hello, if you'd like some work, I have some property I need moved and I can pay directly in gold. The person didn't answer, but walked towards him and drew a sword. Cursing, he let go of the cart and began to form an orb of cold between his palms. Then they got close enough, and he recognized her. Oh, it's you again, he rolled his eyes. Miss the hero, didn't the town guard stop you like 8 times trying to get me? Thought you'd given up. She didn't stop as he spoke. I tried to save the town, but I couldn't, and that's on you, and all I can do now is stop you from doing this to anywhere else. Her face was colder than the town. He shook his head, chuckling under his breath. Miss, you're not seeing the big picture here. There's too much gold for me to carry, but 2 of us could pull a cart filled with more than any one of us could pull by ourselves. I get results, Miss. I make things, and the kingdom is better to have me. No one in that town was important. She charged him, and he let fly his magic spell, but she batted it into the trees with one swipe of her sword. Drachma tried to take a step back, but she closed on him, and with one blow he fell. Miz looked on him, and the town, and the piles of gold, and then turned around and walked back down the road. She had places to be. Thank you. This episode of Tales by the Blue Light has been brought to you by an office meeting that could have been an email. Too much productivity in your workplace? Worried your team is moving too fast to accomplish their goals? Trying to undermine your workplace so the mole people can finally take hold and overthrow humanity like you've been secretly programmed to your whole life? Try setting up an office meeting that could have just been an email. You'll get to watch people glancing at their phones or zoning out at the wall, all while failing to foresee that the mole people will soon trample over all they hold dear, destroying the world of man for good and casting them into the darkness mankind cast them into millennia ago. An office meeting that could have been an email. Waste your time today. All right. It looks like we have another signal. It's coming in from the middle of nowhere, Utah, an abandoned missile silo, and it's everyone's favorite show, Monster Hunter Monthly. Hi, I'm your long-suffering host, Magpie Jones, and this is Monster Hunter Monthly. And you know, by long-suffering, I think I really mean it this time. If you're new here, this year, my brother Albatross left a baby dragon in my home, and it's rapidly growing. I mean, look, the thing eats so much ground beef, it's hard to ship that, much stuff in when I'm supposedly in a secret location. It's not easy to get an abandoned missile silo. So thanks for that, bro. If a werewolf eats me, that's on you, Albie. Right. Well, since no one takes me seriously anymore, I'm going to use today's episode to talk to you about a magical creature that no one takes seriously, the majestic jackalope. Jackalopes, as you may know, are simply bunnies that have antlers. They actually, don't really do a lot except for fuel the leaf. That might sound like a weird power until you realize how jackalopes came into the world. You see, jackalopes haven't actually always existed. One day some bored or in need of some quick cash taxidermist put some antlers on a bunny corpse and sold it. And then since then, lots of other bored or poor taxidermists realized the same thing. This happens all the time. And usually, nothing happens. But, you see, a bunny that has antlers is just, it's benign, really. It doesn't eat anyone. It doesn't stalk you through the eons. It doesn't get given to you by your brother so it can take over your home and slowly push you into hiding in your own living space. No, it just sort of looks funny and eats plants. And somehow people's belief or desire to believe in the jackalope made jackalopes. They do exist, and they only exist because we know about them. They're precious creatures, and I wish I had one instead of this danger fire-breathing dragon. Well, now that I educated you, let's check in on the mail. Oh, we have another update from that hunter group we heard from last month. Hi, guys! Dear Magpie, the creature we're following puts people inside paintings, but they aren't dead in there. No, they can move. But only when no one and no thing is watching. No people, no animals, no camera. We've received communication from within the paintings from survivors and watched panicked and confused museum staff trying to figure out how their paintings changed. We still haven't found the monster. We'll report back again when we know more. Well, that's terrifying. I wish them luck. Okay, any other letters? Ooh, how about this one? Dear Magpie, do you miss that changeling you wrote about? That's enough for this month on. Okay, you know what? I cut myself off on that before, and I do wonder what happened to them, that changeling. If they survived, how they are. You know what? I'm done. Someone else can host this show next month. I need to find that changeling. Guess what, Albatross? If this dragon is so important to you, you come take care of it. I'm going to go on a road trip now. I'm going to be writing my own letters into the show, and I'm going to find that changeling. So, usually I sign off telling you hunters not to die, and, well, yes, I hope you don't die, but I hope you wish the same of me. This is Magpie Jones signing off for the month of April, and I hope I'm back here hosting soon. Adios, amigos. This episode of Tales by the Blue Light has been brought to you by a bunch of loose teeth you found in your pocket. Why are they there? Whose are they? They look human. Some of them do. Those few look like dog's teeth. They're still damp. You look behind you. The street is empty. The teeth rattle in your hand. If you don't like this product, try our other line of product. A sound that keeps coming from your closet, but there's nothing in there every time you get up to check. Call to order now. All right, so we've been blazing through here today. We only got one more story left, and then our little radio skit at the end. So, without further ado, we have this month's horror story. It's called How to Be Me Without Even Trying. She could feel her heart going into overdrive. Just a few feet away from her, Viola was going to step out of that door. She would finally meet her. She clutched the vinyl copy of Viola's first album to her chest. It was like her heart was just beating. Excuse me. It was just beating on it like a drum. The door swung open. What the hell, Sarah? A man said as Viola stormed out ahead of him. I'm not dealing with this tonight. Go back on the bus! She pulled out a cigarette and, putting it to her lips, faced the wall and flicked the lighter ineffectively. The man didn't leave, however, and grabbed Viola by the shoulder, jerking her backward, the cigarette and lighter flying off to bounce against the alley wall and land on the ground. You're a piece of work. You think you can just leave me? Huh? He yelled. Jesus, Frank, what the hell? She tried to pull away, but he clenched his hand harder. She, who waited with the vinyl, stood watching, eyes wide. You're not leaving me, he slurred. You're drunk, she lured. And with a punch, she demurred. She, with the vinyl's knees, shook as Viola pushed herself up from the ground and saw her fan waiting. Frank's eyes turned up too, and he seemed to have some semblance of recognition that this was, in fact, a bad look for him, and not something he'd like on the front page of TMZ. which he thought was a pity because he'd handpicked these sneakers, $240, to go with the houndstooth dress shirt, $340, and if he'd been caught under normal circumstances, he'd be in perfect form for that. Shit, he spat. Viola scampered up and, giving Frank the bird, led the girl with the vinyl out of the alley. Are you okay? She asked, and the girl nodded. What's your name? I'm your biggest fan, the girl ejaculated, the words having been built up inside her and practiced in front of mirrors for weeks. Viola smiled through the early signs of the shiner. Of course, you know. She frowned, looking over. You actually look quite a lot like me. Was it just that she was dressed like her, down to the smallest fashion details, or was it something more? The girl's voice was higher than hers, though, and her face wasn't quite the same. Stronger cheekbones? She was a bit taller and more slender, but the likeness was uncanny. Oh, thank you, she replied. I want to be just like you. Viola laughed. Definitely get better taste in men than me. Better yet, don't get involved with men if you can help it. Heterosexuality is a curse. She reached to her bag, pulled out another cigarette, and then swore she realized that she didn't ever light her anymore. You don't happen to smoke, do you? The girl shook her head. Viola sighed and then put a smile up again. All right. So, do you want me to sign that for you? The fan nodded, and Viola pulled out a Sharpie from her purse and scrawled a message on it. To my biggest fan, heart, love Viola. The girl gasped. Oh, thank you. Don't mention it. You got a safe way to get home? The girl pulled her phone out and tapped to call a lift. Great. Viola sat down on the curb and fussed up her hair. So I'll just, wait till it shows up. God damn it, Frank. You mean cello? Yeah, cello. Our band names, yeah. Never should have started dating them. But he's your soulmate. You said so on your 45th blog, Mistletoe and Footprints. Sarah laughed. Viola and cello are characters. Frank and I used to be together, but he... I can't even say he changed. I just kind of realized who he was. The girl just looked confused, so Viola brushed her comments out of the air. Forget I said anything. My lift is here. It was amazing to meet you. Stain, take care of yourself. The girl waved goodbye and got into the car. 3 weeks later, Frank, cello, Morton, was looking out at the crowd from behind the curtains. He relished these moments, the people just itching to see them perform. He loved it, loved the way they fawned over him, loved the way that they sang along to the music before the show and called for Viola to come on the stage. Viola. He kept his face stoic, but he roiled like the moving crowd inside. She had told him, of all people, him, the creative mastermind, that she was breaking up with him. He couldn't let that go. He couldn't abide such unfathomable cruelty. She was a dolt, and he'd prove it. That thought coincided perfectly with him spotting the girl who held the vinyl in the crowd. She was standing near the front, but not actually in the front. She was very composed, swaying gently with the crowd instead of joining in their festivities. She looked so similar to Sarah. Not so similar... No. Not similar to Sarah. Similar to Viola, which was even more important. Sure, there were a few differences, but he could get past them. His hand clenched the curtain. Yes. He grabbed a passing stagehand. You. Yeah, hey, you. Can you get someone to bring an audience member backstage after the concert? The stagehand, who had the kind of acne that meant he was still in high school at most, froze for a moment at the thought of that much responsibility, and then nodded. Yes, sir. Yes, I can get right on that. Good boy, Cello said, turning back to the vinyl girl and forgetting the gut boy's face instantly. The girl pulled her skirt down, keeping her knees tight together. Her posture was firm, stiff even. Not loose, like Viola, but that could change. People can be coached, taught. He shut the door behind them so they were alone in the room together. Hi, you know who I am, of course. Yes, she replied. You're Cello? Yeah, so let's talk. He pulled a chair up and scooted close to her so that their knees touched. She looked away at the wall. He grabbed one of her hands. You're Viola's biggest fan, aren't you? She looked back and nodded. I love Viola. She's my queen and the highlight of my life. Great, he replied. How would you like to be Viola? She tilted her head slowly to the side till her hair was drooping over into a fan. But there's only one Viola. She's the queen. Viola is... She's getting too old for this, isn't she? She's what, 26, practically ancient. How old are you? 19. Great, perfect. See, you're going to be the new model, the replacement. You're going to take over for Viola. It seemed to be sinking in. You mean, I'll perform? I'll sing? I love to sing. You'll sing, sweetheart. You'll be the star of every show from here to Beijing. But we're going to have to make some adjustments. He grabbed her cheek and pulled a little, like these. Far too pointy. I know a guy in Reno who can smooth those down without even leaving a visible scar. It's pretty invasive, but that's the price of fame, isn't it? I can be famous? She replied, absolutely. We'll be partners in this. I'll make you the most famous woman on earth. She pulled her hand out of his and held it out to shake. If we're partners, then my name is... He pressed his finger to her mouth. Shh. Your name is Viola now. Now let me hear you sing. She sang. It was too high. He'd have to get that fixed too. Sarah, Viola Reynolds, was reclining, listening to soul on her phone. She tapped her foot against the couch and rolled her head back and forth on the throw pillow beneath her head. Then the glass shattered. Not in the room she was in, but somewhere else in the house. She sat up, opening her eyes and staring at the door behind which the sound had come from. There was a mirror on either side of the door, an odd quirk of the place, and she could see herself staring back at her. Hesitantly, she got up and punched 911 into the phone, holding her thumb over the call icon. She pulled the door open and stepped into the kitchen where a brick lay on the floor, a note tied to it with a string. Her lip trembled as she looked at it. Then nervously, she reached down and pulled the piece of paper off. It had a smiley face drawn on it. Frowning, she turned around and flinched for a moment, seeing an intruder, before remembering there was a mirror there. Then she remembered she hadn't shut the door behind her. She walked toward herself. Hello, it's good to see you again, she said to herself. Viola took a few steps backward, her feet sliding on the glass. She nearly fell and braced herself against the kitchen table. The doppelganger pulled the cloth out of her purse and lunged at her, pressing the cloth against her face. It smelled like almonds. Viola lashed out, grabbing at her assailant's face, slamming her fists into her however she could. It's not working, the doppelganger said. Then she heard his voice. Oh, hell no. It's chloroform. It's supposed to knock her out, Frank said, and rushed over from somewhere, holding Viola down. The doppelganger pulled back and yanked out her phone as Viola tried to split the cloth out of her mouth. According to Google, the doppelganger said, chloroform takes about 5 minutes to set in. Frank let out a cry of rage. Then why does it work so fast in the movies? I don't know. Quit shouting at me. Well, we'll just have to hold her down until then. Help me. They did, and she struggled, and by the time Viola did pass out, Frank and the vinyl girl were covered in small cuts and bruises, panting. He smiled over at her. Good work, Viola. You're her now. Now, we just have to take her to the place I prepared her for before the concert tonight. She nodded, seeming to be in a bit of a daze, and then they rolled Viola up in a blanket and carried her into the back of the van they had waiting. Then they began to drive, their nervous sweat and silence turning into strange whoops of laughter and obscene triumph. They drove the van across town toward a storage locker facility. Okay, now we need her, so I'm going to check up on her before we put her in there. The new Viola cocked her head. Why do you need her? You have me. I'm Viola now. You said I'm the star. He smiled. Yeah, of course you're right. Yeah, no need to worry. They pulled into the storage locker facility and opened up the back of the truck where Viola was laying on top of the blankets they'd carried her out in. She was limp, her mouth a bit askew. Frank grabbed at her ankle and then drew his hand back. She was cold. Colder than she was supposed to be. He looked at Vinyl Girl, who looked placidly confused. Is something wrong? You administered the chloroform like I said to. Well, no, you didn't say we'd be doing it for 5 minutes. He looked back at Sarah, his face flushing, his eyes dilating. His heart was beating a cacophony in his chest. Shit. He closed the door. We need to get back to the house ASAP. Vinyl Girl shook her head. The police will be there by now. We'll be arrested. He looked back at the body. But we need her. We need what she knows. She grabbed him by the breast of his shirt with a force he wasn't expecting. I already told you. You have me. I'm Viola. I'm the star. You don't need her. I do, though. She had the ideas. She was the one who came up with the look for the band. She came up with the direction. He could feel the sweat dripping from his brow. We can't do this. I screwed the plan up. New Viola shoved him. We're going to do this. I am Viola. Now get yourself together. We have a body to get rid of in a show tonight. Are you ready? He nodded. They had to be. Anyways, we'll throw in the storage locker for now. I need to think. Trisha and Mandy had waited all year for these tickets. They hadn't thought that an artist like Viola would come to their city, but then it had popped up on Ticketmaster, and they'd scooped them up in a heartbeat. Now they were standing in a crowd waiting for Viola to come out in front of the high platform stage. First, Cello did. He made a big show about, being the brains behind the operation, but no one really cared too much about him. If he was fired tomorrow, they all knew they could find someone else to do his job. He got out his MacBook and DJ'd a few tunes for the crowd before they started shouting for Viola, and the stage lighting changed. A double bass chord played, and she entered. The queen, the best of them all, the finest, the most fashionable, the one and only Viola. She looked taller than she did in the pictures. That was a surprise. A lot of people think music is an instrument, Viola said, as she always did before the shows. They watched them on YouTube and Instagram. But really, it's in the person pulling the bowstrings. That's me. She sounded a bit different in person, too, like she was trying to make her voice lower than normal. They've got to smooth that out for the recordings, obviously. The music kicked in, and Viola began belting out her first song. Trisha and Mandy screamed, dancing along to the tune, shouting out the chorus with Viola. They'd waited so long to see their hero. And here she was. Cello bobbed along in the background, occasionally messing with the balance or keying in a new sound. They didn't notice when the hand crept around the corner. It was pale. There were gray spots on it, but it was there. Black-clothed stagehands were trying to stop her, but they seemed scared of her. Soon they could see her, her eyes drooping with bags, her skin nearly blue. She stumbled onto the stage and looked Viola in the eyes. "You're dead," she whispered. "You're dead," she said louder. "It's not you, I'm Viola." She scampered back and grabbed for Cello, who tried to push her away. "It's not her, I'm her, I'm her, I'm her. She can't take me away from me." Cello yelled as she grabbed at him, clutching the front of his shirt. He tried to pull back, but he felt his balance slip. He felt his shoe turn under his foot, and his body began to fall backwards, the edge of the platform disappearing. Vinyl Girl's face still screaming that she was Viola as the two of them plummeted and cracked against the concrete floor below. The pale woman scrambled to the back of the stage and looked down. She took in, never changing her expression. The music continued as she walked up to the microphone in front of the silent, stunned crowd. "Who's the original, topping the rest? Who's the Viola we all know best?" She croaked into the microphone. "That's me." Thank you. All right, we have one last segment tonight, our little radio play. All right, so we'll just wait here for our guests to arrive. Hello. All right, so usually we have Chris here, but we have a special person filling in today.
Hi, I'm Amber.
Oh, it's
Is this on? No, it isn't.
Now it's on.
I'm Amber. Oh, yeah, that's on.
All right. Yeah, thank you for joining me. All right. So today we have our final sketch of the evening. It's a little bit we're calling Cereal Business.
Yes.
All right, Mark. So I'm excited to hear about these new breakfast cereal ideas you've been preparing for the company. We're down in sales, so we could really use something stellar.
Tim, I've got just what you need. People love marshmallows, right? The more of them you throw in cereal, the better, right?
Brilliant. A cereal that's just marshmallows. I love it. We'll get R&D on the phone right away.
No. This is far better than that. See, this cereal turns you into a marshmallow.
What? Sorry, say that again?
It turns you into a marshmallow.
I really, truly think I misheard you. Once more, this time with feeling.
It turns you into a marshmallow.
This time, sing it to me.
It turns you into a marshmallow.
Do it as a celebrity impression.
It turns you into a marshmallow.
Say it in the Batman voice.
It turns you into a marshmallow.
Okay, normal again.
It turns you into a...
What the hell is wrong with you? It turns you into a marshmallow? Why would you think that is a good idea? How could you even do that?
It's simple, actually. Every box includes a cursed voodoo doll made of a marshmallow, as well as a special magic ritual on the back of the box.
Mark, that's a terrible idea.
You're right. It should be inside the box so people have to buy it to read it.
Mark, you're insane. This plan is insane. I'm never going to approve it. So don't tell me any more about it. What are your other plans?
Well, all the rest of our plans involve cutting the price of our product.
Cutting the price.
Yeah, we'd make less money on each box,
Mark.
but...
So, where can we get a supplier of marshmallow voodoo dolls? End scene! Thank you so much. All right. Thank to all of you for listening. Our producers are Rob Southgate and Chris Mao, and this show is, as always, written and performed by me, James Wilder, live at the Blue Box Cafe in Elgin, Illinois. So that's all for tonight from the Blue Light. Come back next month where we'll be sure to offer you more tales of the fantastic, into the darkest depths of your horror, the brightest flights of your fancy, the biggest dreams of your future. From all of us here at the Blue Box Cafe in Elgin, Illinois, keep your light shining. There's plenty more to see. And thank all of you for staying to listen.